Okay, and we are ready. Nita, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our webinar. I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Nita, and I'm a grade 10 student from Pine Ridge Secondary School. So Franz and I will be your co-hosts for the evening, and I'll just let Franz introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Franz Hartmann. I'm the coordinator of the Ontario Greenbelt Alliance. The OGA, Ontario Greenbelt Alliance, is made up of over 100 members from across the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And what brings us together is our concern for the Greenbelt. We want to protect it, we want to enhance it, we want to grow it.
So I will be doing a land acknowledgement. So I know all of you are from different places around Ontario, but the land acknowledgement is specifically towards the Durham District School Board, so Uxbridge, Brock and Scugog Townships, Ajax, Pickering, where I'm located, Whitby, and Oshawa. So the Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous people all across Turtle Island, North America. We acknowledge that Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. Now, please spend a moment to think about the territories you are in and feel free to share this information in the chat. Okay, well, next slide, please. So as people are typing in the chat, I'm quickly going to go over our agenda for the day. So we will start with introductions, then move on to why do the GBYs care, a quick tour of the Greenbelt, environmental benefits, some threats, OGA efforts, the provincial consultation, why this matters, and how to take action. So thank you for your thoughts. Now please use the chat box again to tell everyone where you are and why you are here. That's cool. So you guys are from Pickering also. Okay, very nice. Most of you guys are here to support the Greenbelt. Okay, well, next slide, please. So the Greenbelt Youth Ambassador program has youth from all over the Greater Golden Horseshoe. All of us care about what is happening in our local environments because at the end of the day, we are dealing with issues that will impact our futures. The biggest issue of all is that the youth perspective is missing in almost all long-term development planning and environmental protection. Because of this, we, the GBYAs, want to ensure that we are making a difference by using our voices to speak up about important issues, such as those involving the Greenbelt. The main reason I joined the GBYA is because I saw people talking about making a difference, but there wasn't any initiative or any action being taken. But in this case, we are taking action by coming together as a group and problem solving amongst ourselves. So now we will take a quick tour of the Greenbelt. So this is a map of the current Greenbelt. Marissa, can you please draw a circle around Pickering just so that everyone knows where I am? And Toronto is just to the left of that. Okay, thank you. The Greenbelt includes all the land in the green shaded areas and those green squiggly lines that connect to Lake Ontario. The green squiggly lines are urban river valleys. So the Greenbelt was created by the province in 2005 and permanently protects land from sprawl-style development. Next slide, please. So food security, 7,000 farms were protected by the Greenbelt with some of the most valuable agricultural land. Carbon sequestration offsets 71 million tons of carbon each year. Flood mitigation absorbs rainwater and manages stormwater. It also provides $224 million in flood protection. Natural spaces, the Greenbelt serves as a sanctuary for endangered species and agriculture near the city. So 78 species at risk protected, including the peregrine falcon, gray wolf, and many others. Climate resilience, so tree cover and vegetation keep ambient temperature down. River valleys provide a cooling effect. And I will be passing it on to Franz now.
Thank you, Nita. So actually, could you go back to the other slide, Marissa? Thanks. You can see here, the Greenbelt does a lot of stuff for us, for people. It does a lot of stuff for nature. And it is a wonderful, wonderful body, piece of land that's protected to allow us to do all of these wonderful things. And I think it's really important just to spend a moment to think about the huge amount of service and benefit that comes from the Greenbelt. Next slide, please. So the Greenbelt does a really good job of protecting over 2 million acres of land from urban sprawl. And if you're not sure what urban sprawl is, the picture at the bottom where you see those houses and right beside it you see farmland, those houses are a perfect example of urban sprawl. It's when builders put stuff on beautiful farmland, on natural areas, and they build housing which is really bad for the environment, and it's also not very good for people. The problem is that not everything is fine with the Greenbelt. For example, lands adjacent to and close to the Greenbelt, for example, like wetlands, farmland, and natural areas, are continuously being threatened by sprawl-style development. You may have heard that there were plans to build a big Amazon warehouse on an environmentally sensitive wetland in South Pickering. These plans were actually supported by the city of Pickering, their council, as well as by the province of Ontario. But the community, when they heard about it, they said, this is terrible. Why are we putting a warehouse on these precious environmentally sensitive lands, this wetland? So they got together and they said no, and they worked really hard to stop this from happening. And thankfully, a couple of weeks ago, the Amazon pulled out, and then the city said, okay, we're not going to develop this land. Now people are saying, well, these wetlands need to be permanently protected by being added to the Greenbelt. Sadly, Pickering is just one example of this sort of threatening. Across the Greater Golden Horseshoe, developers are putting pressure on local municipalities and the provincial government to allow them to build sprawl-style development on farmland and natural areas. And these lands need protection. They need Greenbelt protection. But even lands that have been protected by the Greenbelt, that are part of the Greenbelt, are being threatened. Some of you may have heard about Highway 13 and the Bradford Bypass, and also known as the Holland Marsh. This is being proposed, and if it gets built, it's going to destroy a significant number of farmland and natural areas in the Greenbelt. And the sad thing is, it's completely unnecessary. Next slide, please. This is a map of some of the other areas that are being threatened by sprawl-style development, and that would definitely benefit from being protected by the Greenbelt. This map comes from a website called Ontario Yours to Protect, which includes details of lands across the Greater Golden Horseshoe that are being threatened. The web address is simple, yourstoprotect.ca. You can go there and click on any one of those bubbles and you'll get more information. If you know of any sprawl threats in your community, tell us about it in the chat function right now. And also put an emoji if you live near one of these threats, if you know that.
Franz, if I could just step in real quick, could I ask Marissa to just guide people on how to put emojis or just annotate on the screen?
Sure. So if you're in your computer, on the top of the screen, there should be view and annotate. I will show you how it should look like. You can stamp. I live here, so you can kind of see there is some, but if you're on your phone, you can put it on your chat. GBYers, you can also come in, you're not excluded. So a lot of people from Toronto. I heard Yeah, Pickering and around there.
I did notice someone was from Caledon, all the way from Caledon, if I'm not wrong.
Checking in the chat. Pickering, there's development in Seaton. Yeah, so you can look that some of you are actually living in the development that is happening right now. Thank you for sharing with us.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, let's go on to the next slide, please. So because all of these lands around the Greenbelt are being threatened by sprawl-style development, the Ontario Greenbelt Alliance launched a campaign last fall to build public support to add lands to the Greenbelt and keep them permanently protected. So you'll see here on the right, that was the kind of poster we sent out. MZOs or Minister's Zoning Orders, that's a special tool that the provincial government has to bypass really important public planning or planning policies and in consultations, etc. So we made it very clear to the province, do not, and to municipalities, we need to grow the Greenbelt. Next slide, please. Now, the Ontario Greenbelt Alliance has been calling for threatened lands to be added to the Greenbelt for some time. In fact, a few years ago, a number of OGA members spent over a year doing a scientific analysis of lands that should be added to the Greenbelt and therefore receive permanent protection. And they focused on lands that contain critical drinking water resources and that are key to keeping our watersheds and our river systems healthy for nature and for people. And these lands are colored in blue on this map. And this map became known as the Blue Belt map. You can see the dark blue and the light blue, the river systems flowing into Lake Ontario, etc. And for those of you who aren't experts on watersheds, most of us who live close to Lake Ontario, we rely on Lake Ontario for our drinking water. So the health of the rivers and watersheds that are directly north of us have a direct impact on our drinking water, which means that protecting these lands by adding them to the Greenbelt means protecting our drinking water. Next slide, please. So on February 17th, the province decided to make an announcement that they actually wanted to start a process to grow the Greenbelt. Step one is a public consultation process, which began on February 17th. And they want public feedback on a bunch of ideas that they have put forward about how to grow the Greenbelt. Now, if you're interested, details of the consultation are available at ERO. That's the letter E, it stands for Environmental Registry of Ontario, ero.ontario.ca. And if you go there and you just type in the search engine Greenbelt, you'll come to this page here. Now, we're really glad that the province is discussing growing the Greenbelt. Now, we want to make sure they grow the Greenbelt properly and that the youth voice is heard loud and clear. So let me now briefly outline the details of the provincial consultation. Next slide, please. So the government wants to focus on two areas for their Greenbelt expansion or where they want to grow the Greenbelt. The first is something called the Periscope Moraine, and it's kind of west of Hamilton and Oakville and Burlington and so forth. It starts kind of in Brantford and goes northeast all the way up to Caledon. And we think we're very happy that they're looking at this piece of land because this was actually part of the Blue Belt map that I talked about before. Next map, please. And the second area that the government is focusing on are urban river valleys. As Nita noted earlier, shorelands along most of the rivers that flow into Lake Ontario in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, those blue squiggly lines you see going into Lake Ontario with all the names of the rivers there, they're part of the Greenbelt. And now the government wants to know if more lands along the urban river valleys should be included, should be added. And the answer, we think, is yes, but this should also include private land beside the rivers, because on a lot of places along the river systems, there's private land, and we'd like to see that permanently protected because it's so important to the health of the river system. Next slide, please. So most of you probably have not been part of a provincial discussion before, or provincial consultation. So the province has made it easy, and they've said, you know, what we want you to do is provide answers to 6 questions. And these are the 6 questions that you will see if you go to the website. They're not difficult questions. Now, question 4, which is of particular interest to the OGA, is, do you have suggestions for other potential areas to grow the Greenbelt? And we do. As I noted earlier, there are lots of areas that are being threatened, and we think the provincial government should consider adding these lands to the Greenbelt, and more generally, the lands identified in the Blue Belt map that I showed you earlier should be added. Next slide, please. And remember, as you're thinking about, you know, what land should be added to the Greenbelt, keep in mind all these other lands that are being threatened and need protection. And now I'll send it back to Anita.
Okay, thank you, Franz. So some of you might be asking, why take time out of your busy lives to get involved in this provincial consultation and make a submission? So we need to show support for the Periscope Moraine and more urban river valley lands to the Greenbelt. It's important to protect our urban river valleys because, as Franz mentioned earlier, almost all of us get our drinking water from Lake Ontario. We need to identify additional lands that require Greenbelt protection. There are still many areas that can contain the important wildlife habitats that don't fall under the Greenbelt Protection Plan. And also, it's a numbers game. So the more submissions that the government receives, the more government officials will realize how many people actually care. So your voice is definitely important. More attention is gained toward the issue, so people will most likely realize the issues that are happening around them. Next slide, please. Thank you. So if any of you would like to submit your personal response to the government, please visit the website ero.ontario.ca. To learn more about what the OGA is submitting, contact Franz as franzgreenbeltalliance@gmail.com. A quick reminder that the deadline for the submission of all responses is set for April 19th at 11:59 p.m. sharp. So if you are not comfortable with submitting your own response, you're welcome to add your name to our response that the youth ambassadors will be submitting. So for more information about this, you can contact the youth ambassadors directly at greenbeltyouth@ecospark.ca. So thank you everyone once again for attending our webinar. If you guys would like to follow the OGA and the GBYA Instagram, they're on the slide. And if anyone has any questions, you can type it in the chat or turn on your mic.
Thank you very much, Nita and Franz. That was a very, very insightful presentation. We'll now open the floor to everyone else. We are a relatively small group today, so I would highly encourage the rest of our participants today to turn on your camera and just interact with us. If anyone has any questions, you can always use your reactions to raise your hand. And then I can call you out accordingly. Hi there, welcome.
Hi, it's Sandy here, and I'm with the Simcoe County Greenbelt Coalition, and as you can see, I'm not a youth, but I'm really happy to see you young folks getting involved. It's really important that you start young, and as you said, it's your future that's at stake here. And so I just want to encourage you to keep going and speak up and let this government know what you think. So keep up the good work, folks.
Thank you so much for that. We greatly appreciate it. The encouragement. Definitely need all the encouragement we can get. If any of the GBYAs would like to agree with me, now is your time. I did see a question in the chat of someone asking, after the pandemic comes to an end, what does the GBYA anticipate to take part in that'll benefit our environment? I can add my answer to this, but I would also like to open the floor to some GBYAs because usually in this program, we always leave it to our youth to bring issues to us and what matters to them the most. So I would also be interested in hearing from our own youth ambassadors, maybe some pressing issues that they have in the back of their minds that they would like to tackle. Kaylee, you're always itching, so I always want to open the floor to you.
Yay. I am super easy because I'm on training and recruitment, so I just get to bring new people in and train them. So that's not a very committal answer to me, but I'm sure Ariella would love to give an answer.
Think benthic.
In all honesty, I haven't really thought about after the pandemic. It's not been at the forefront of my mind, especially with us going into our third lockdown, which is so exciting. But I don't even know how to answer that right now. Like, I'm hoping that in the future we can do some like in-person events and kind of bring people out into the environment so they can experience what we're talking about, and kind of having these types of sessions actually out in the open and being able to introduce people to the nature that they should be protecting or should want to be interested in protecting. But that's not been on my mind.
Thanks for that, Ariella. Paul, you have something to say?
I was going to say, put a couple ideas out there.
Well, I will let everyone know for just our new participants who are joining us today. So before COVID actually hit us, the Greenbelt Youth Ambassador program was very much about taking youth out onto the Greenbelt and having them experience the Greenbelt firsthand. So for our first tour, we were able to get a few ambassadors out to a local bee farm. Some of our ambassadors were able to visit the Kofler Scientific Reserve, which is run by the Toronto University. It's a site where a lot of leading research is being done into environmental protection and conservation. So that was exciting as well. So this is definitely, sorry if there's an airplane in the background. So there's definitely plans to have the youth ambassadors out and about on the Greenbelt after COVID. But then also at the same time, we're hoping then perhaps, some outreach events to just spread the word and inform other youth as well.
Another option is going out and actually doing a stream study. So picking one of the areas where, there's something going on and going in, and we've got all the equipment to go in and do an OBVN certified stream study and get to know a little bit about the science of watersheds and how they work. So we could do something like that. We've got lots of outdoor programs. So, and there's lots of great hikes as well. So I think it'd be fun to actually plan a day where we can all come together that's not online and just say hi and have fun, because I think the world's going to need a little fun when we get to start hanging out together again. So, and Franz will put the German subtitles on his movies, and I'll invite you all to come for a great hike.
Do we have any other questions? Any questions involving the, submitting a response, for example, or any of the response that the youth ambassadors are planning?
Do we have talking notes and kind of background information that we can share with people who've signed on tonight. So we can kind of get that to them right away. I think there are some. Franz, if I'm not mistaken, did Anne send something out?
Yeah, there is a draft submission and some sample answers, and they are on the. If you want access to those, please just email me, franzgreenbeltalliance@gmail.com, and I'll gladly send them to you.
We actually have a comment from Peter. He said that the Periscope Moraine recharges the Grand River watershed, and they're not part of Lake Ontario. It will be very important to protect Grand River watershed as it's it's important for groundwater. The surrounding areas of the Grand River watershed rely on groundwater for suitable drinking water, not from Lake Ontario. So this is a statement for the Greenbelt Youth Ambassadors. Could you possibly include the Grand River watershed in your submission? So something to keep in mind, definitely. Thank you, Marissa. Yes, you can find Franz's email in the chat as well as the website to the ERO submission straight away. I believe our ambassadors are meeting tomorrow to actually talk about their possible plan of action in their submission, but would any of the ambassadors like to just give us a sneak peek, what maybe you might have in mind for it? Okay, sorry, did anyone say it? Okay.
Sorry, before we get into that, I just had a question. Sorry, I skipped over. But Franz, I had a question for you if you'd want to touch on this a little bit. So as like GBYA, we sent a submission to Bill 257 just a couple weeks ago, or actually recently, and now we're talking about growing the Greenbelt. So what are your views on the provincial government on one hand promoting the growth of the Greenbelt, but on the other hand, using a bill like Bill 257 to expedite the process of development? Like, do you think that's kind of like contrasting? The government is unstable, something like that. I want to hear your views on that.
Sure. So I cannot tell you what the motives are behind the government and why they do what to anybody who understands planning and wilderness protection would say it's very contradictory. Bill 257 gives a lot of powers to the province to essentially bypass and I would say undermine really good local planning and local participation. And so if you just looked at that, you'd go, okay, this province doesn't care at all about preserving wilderness spaces and preserving farmlands and preserving important water sources. And then they have this Greenbelt consultation, which suggests they do. Why are they doing this? I don't know. I'm, as the coordinator of the Ontario Greenbelt Alliance, it's not my job to speculate on why the government does this or shouldn't do this. Sandy, who's with the Simcoe County Greenbelt Coalition, a member of the OGA, he may have a perspective on this. That being said, I think the important thing to remember is that it's really the governments need to, or this government needs to hear from as many youth as possible, because governments are sensitive to what the public says to them. And if enough people say we want to grow the Greenbelt, and if enough people say we want to stop Bill 257, then they're more likely to listen. So it is, as Nita said before, it really is a numbers game. The more youth, the more people that participate in the Grow the Greenbelt consultation, the more likely the right thing will happen.
Well, I could just add to that. I agree with what Franz has said. There was an article, a big article in the Star on Saturday, and if you want to see what really motivates this government, then read that article. I'm pretty cynical about the Conservative Party, and so I won't I won't belabor that. But the MZOs that are being used are basically being used to allow development that would not likely have otherwise gone ahead in many cases. Certainly not in the same time frame. So I think I'll leave it at that before I get into trouble. And I'm going to have to sign off. So I've got something else on tonight that I have to go to. So again, I want to thank you, young folks, for doing what you're doing and getting involved, and keep at it. It's a long haul, and you'll probably be doing this when you look like me. So, okay, thanks, kids, and thanks, Franz and Paul, for you guys for your efforts there. So I'm going to hang up now, and okay, thanks. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you for joining us, Sandy.
Good night.